Hello and welcome to this week's Street Soccer United podcast with me, Keith Mabbott, founder and the CEO of the Street Soccer Foundation. And with me on today's show, I am so pleased to have literally one of the nicest and kindest guys I know, the brilliant Roland Stanley, founder and director of Dragon Coworking. Roland, thank you so much for joining us today. To kick things off, for the benefit of our listeners, our partners and supporters, and the young people we help coach and support through the foundation, please give us a 60-second introduction to Mr. Roland Stanley.
Thanks very much, Keith. It's quite an introduction. I think that's possibly the best introduction I've ever had to any interview. So thanks very much for inviting me on. I really appreciate that. I'd always do anything to support Street Soccer Foundation and the amazing work that you've done in the past and continuing to do, and continuing to build the foundation. So my name is Roland Stanley. I'm from Rochester, born and bred in the Medway towns, love the towns. I live there with my wife, my son, and also my cockapoo called Monty. So 3 years ago now, 3 years, which is really flown past, I founded Dragon Coworking, which is co-working space based in Rochester. I built it predominantly just to build something that people really loved, and that's always been my big why. To build something that people really want to be a part of, and so far so good. We've succeeded. We're just about to expand. We have 82 members. We still have 82 members despite all the strangeness and things going on around us. And our big thing is always about community. It's about bringing people together, about helping people out, and putting the right people in the room at the right time so they can actually help build their businesses and build their relationships.
Absolutely perfect intro and a cracking opening to the brilliant man that you are, Roland. Now, I want to take you right back to when I believe you were 16 years old. You joined Canterbury College to study hotel and catering. Was this a personal choice of yours, and was it a career pathway you knew you wanted, or was it one that was kind of being laid out in front of you?
Oh, good question. Thanks, Keith. So when I was at Canterbury College, it wasn't laid out in front of me really. I'd always wanted to do something with hotels. And at the time, our family did have a hotel, but they weren't actually involved in the running with it. It was leased out to another company. I had no intention of actually doing anything in the family. I just wanted to do my own thing. I really wanted to study hotel management, but I wasn't the best at school, to put it bluntly, and I walked out of school with no GCSEs or barely scraped two D grades. So I came out of school with virtually nothing, and they wouldn't let me on a hotel management course, but they would let me on a chef's course. So I did that for 3 years, really enjoyed that, really great experiences. Travelled to France and sort of worked in France for 6 months, met some really great people. And then after that, just continued on and absolutely loved the sort of chefing thing. I was never that great at chefing, but it was a good start.
Really interesting. So you always wanted to do something in the hotel space, but not necessarily within the family. But what's really great for me to learn there, Roland, is the fact that you've said, although you admit to not having much of an education, you didn't let that hold you back. And with that determination to want to get into the sector, you had your goal and you went after it. You got yourself onto a relevant training course to become a chef, to get yourself started. It's just brilliant. It's really great, solid advice, for those in particular, the young people that we support through the foundation. So after college, you went on to join the St. George Hotel in Rochester at just 21. Now, I know this was a bit of a family affair for you. I believe it was your grandfather who actually built the hotel, and it was your dad who was running it at that time. How did you get on board, and what was it like working alongside your dad every day?
Yeah, that's right, Keith. It was complete accident. I had no intentions to actually go and work for my dad at all. I'd done a bit for him. We had another business of steel erecting and things. I'd done a bit of summer work, sort of working with an angle grinder, grinding off the rust on the beams and things. But yeah, I had no intentions of doing that. So I didn't intend to actually go back and work for my dad. And it was just circumstances more than anything. I was actually working up in London at the time at a private hospital, which I really enjoyed. My dad had basically taken the hotel back over because the company it was leased out to went bust. He took it over. He was struggling a little bit. And then the chef he had at the time basically handed in his notice. And he said to me, could you come and give me a hand for a few weeks? And I was like, well, yeah, certainly. So I actually sort of wasn't so keen on the travelling up to London. So I was quite actually grateful for the opportunity for my dad to actually come and work a bit locally. So yeah, I went to work for the family business. Never intended to do so, but ended up doing it. And working with my dad was great. My dad was quite, um, my dad was a businessman. He was quite absent when I was a child. He went through a few different things with his business, the business financial difficulties, and he basically, he wasn't there a lot of the time. He literally, I saw him sort of maybe a Sunday, and maybe on holiday for 2 weeks a year, and that was it pretty much. And he had to do what he had to do, which I appreciate that now. But so it was actually quite nice to actually get back to work with him, and actually get to know my dad a bit better.
So your dad took the hotel over and his chef left. In you came to lend a hand to your dad, but that was it. You were in, and then fast forward 20 odd years. But how nice to hear that this actually seemed to have given you a great opportunity to not just work alongside your dad in the sector that you wanted, but to get to know him better, on a personal level. It's a double win. So you went on to become a director of the hotel at a very early age again. You actually started to steer and lead it yourself after your dad came away. What was that like? I mean, was it a case of relishing the opportunity, or was there a fair amount of anxiety about taking over the reins and obviously all the responsibility that comes with it in running a hotel?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's my dad made me my director, and I didn't even know what a director was of a business. And yeah, so I just decided. Well, my dad decided, really said, "Oh, I'd like to leave. I'd like to retire. Did you want to take over?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." I'm only 23, I think, probably at the time, 24. And he just said, literally, right, I bought a house somewhere else. I'm going to go and move there, and that's it. I'm going to leave you to it, which was great because actually, I knew nothing about running a business, but I had no fear. And I pointed out from the start, this business wasn't a successful business at all. It was bankrupt. A huge debt with the bank. Very few customers. It was still really just trying to build it all back up again. So I had a really quite a low starting point, really. So it wasn't like I was going to ruin an empire or anything like this. I wasn't going to drive a successful business into the ground. And I think, because I was young, I just had no fear. And I didn't mind working 18, 20 hours a day, every day, doing all the jobs that nobody else wanted to do to actually make the business work, and it's, we couldn't afford to employ lots of people, people there had to do multiple jobs. I probably did the job of about 3 or 4 people on my own. So literally I was doing a management job. I was looking after events, looking after functions. I did a wedding coordinator. I was barman. I did bits of cleaning. I just did literally bits of everything. But it was a good grounding, and actually for a business, it was good to learn absolutely everything that went on in that business.
So at 23, 24, you became a director with your dad retiring, and you took on a fair amount of debt, the business relatively struggling. But like you say, you clearly had such a strong mindset already then, to make a good go of it. And in the lead up to your taking over from your dad, even in those early days and having done so, how did you and your dad resolve any disagreements in connection to running the hotel?
Yeah, to be honest, my dad was always very, very understanding. He basically just said, "Well, if you're in charge, you're in charge. Get on with it. If you need me, I'm there." My granddad had been quite. My granddad could never let go or anything. So when he actually said to my dad, you can take over this, he never quite let him do it, and they fell out a few times. So I think my dad was very conscious he didn't want to go down that route. So, if there was ever a problem, we used to come and just have a chat. I never remember really arguing with my dad. I think we probably did, but we used to just to have discussions about it, and I think a few times he let me make mistakes on purpose, so I learnt it, and but yeah, no, he just literally just let me get on with it, which is really good.
How good to hear discussions rather than disagreements and learning the way through experience. So now it was only until last year when you decided to come out of running the St George Hotel after, like I've touched upon, 22 odd years. I've two questions for you here, Roland. Firstly, I'll tell you that I'm a big fan of Gordon Ramsay and love watching those kitchen nightmares and Hell's Kitchen type shows he does. And I appreciate that may well be a little bit played up for TV, but I do know the hotel and catering industry is extremely demanding. What was the main driver for you to commit to the sector for such a long time?
Yeah, 22 years in hotels. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a long time, and it was time to move on. But yeah, in kitchens like that, Gordon Ramsay. Do you know what? Actually, kitchens were like that and a lot worse. I think now from people I've talked to that still actually in the kitchen trade, things have improved. I don't think you get away with things so much now, but when in my early days, literally when I was in France, you was in that kitchen 14, 15 hours a day. There was a massive hierarchy, the head chef was God, and then you worked your way up. I mean, I remember my first day working in the kitchen in France. They locked me in the fridge with all the live lobsters that I had in stock, and turned the lights off and left me there for half an hour. Then my next job was literally scrubbing the bins with a nail brush. All those sort of things have always been made to do all the washing up but things, they used to like throw flour at the back of your head, and it was quite brutal in the kitchens. There's lots of other things which I probably shouldn't say in an interview that happens, but it was quite, it was almost like the jungle in the kitchen, and he didn't actually challenge the head chef on the things that went on. But nowadays things have definitely changed in the kitchen environment. You wouldn't get away with those things nowadays.
14, 15 hours a day. Goodness me, Roland. And scrubbing bins with a nail brush. What a grounding. All I can say is I'm pleased to learn it seems to have changed a little bit nowadays, and for the better, thankfully. But the second question I wanted to ask you is, why was it after such a period of time, this sort of 22 odd years, that you decided to sell up? Had you been thinking of doing it for a while, or was it quite a sudden and quick decision? And how do you feel about it now? Bearing in mind it had been in the family for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, but really, I mean, my dad had always been quite honest. He said, I don't believe in building monuments. If you want to get rid of something, just get rid of it. I'm not sentimental about things, especially like that sort of business sort of thing. So it was time to move on. So 22 years is a long time in any job and doing anything. I'd had enough basically. But what had happened a few years prior, we did a lot of weddings and things at the hotel, and I love doing the weddings. I love literally taking the bride and groom from first meeting all the way through the journey, sort of maybe 2-3 years sometimes, of getting to know them, getting to know their families, looking after them on their wedding day, right up to the next day when you're saying goodbye to them, and you're wishing them well, packing up their half the cake and things, sending them off, and I love that side of it. But I just felt myself actually falling out of love with it. And the wedding industry is one of those things. Unless you're 100% committed, unless you absolutely love what you do, you can't be looking after people's special days, their most important day for themselves. So that was the thing really. I fell out of love with it, and it was just the right time to move on for me. And then also the co-working side was starting to build, and I thought, you know what, that's what I want to be doing.
Well, I think the key takeaway for me there is, like you say, particularly if it's your business, but often in any walk of life, unless you love what you do, you should have the courage and conviction to make a change. And as you did, 22 odd years working in the family business, running the hotel, clearly with personal ties, to the business, and obviously through your family, linked to both your grandfather and your dad. But you've said you fell out of love with it and made that call. And as you mentioned, you'd created the Dragon Coworking project, which we'll come on to, which was obviously beginning to take off. And it makes just great sense, but really fantastic, Roland, to stand by your kind of decision and conviction to go ahead and make that change for yourself, and good on you for that. So outside of having run the hotel for as long as you did, I also do know that you're a director and founder of your own property business. What motivated you to get into that sort of property sector with Salenta Properties, and what does the business actually do?
Yeah, so it was Silence. It was actually founded by my granddad back in 1960, 67, I think, something like that. I know our company number is very, very short, so it must have been quite early on. But yeah, basically, my granddad had founded this company, and it just sat around doing nothing for years. And we did have a couple of properties, but then over the years, running the hotel, we'd had the opportunity to buy neighbouring buildings. We bought those mainly so we could retain ownership of the car park at the back and things like that. And I've always been a very cautious sort of investor. I've always saved money up and make sure we've had quite a bit of money to actually do it. I've never taken any sort of real sort of risks with it. And it's again, it's just another source of income. I believe that you should try and diversify with as many different sources of income as you can, just to try and make yourself as resilient as possible for things such as COVID-19 that's going on at the moment. So there's many different revenue streams you've got coming in. It's got to be better for you. So that was my main motivator behind that. So mainly at the moment, we buy property to rent out. We're a caring landlord. I try to look after my tenants as much as possible. I'm not one of these slumlords. If somebody's got a problem, I get it sorted out as soon as possible.
And how was it running both the hotel and the property business at the same time?
Yeah, people. Do you know, you don't. I think you don't actually notice actually when you're so busy. You just get on with it, and it's only when you sort of like look back now. I think, blimey, how did I actually do that? Still at a hotel, I was probably doing, before we actually got events managers and things. I was probably doing like at least two and a half people's jobs. I was still doing sort of 60 hours a week there, plus the property bit on the side, which can take up 10 hours a week, can up 20 hours, can take nothing, it's a bit up over. But it's one of those, when you look back now, you think, blimey, how did I fit everything in?
60 hours a week, Roland. Goodness me. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple of times and you gave a good reference to it when we began. With obviously your main focus right now being Dragon Coworking. Talk to me about this. Firstly, what was the inspiration for you to want to set it up, a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Dragon Coworking. So, I mean, it literally came about by accident. We had an old function room at the hotel. It used to be used. It's a really quite a long, sort of narrow room space, and it used to be used. There used to be a line dancing club. I vaguely remember in the late 80s, I think it was. They used to rent it out purely for line dancing, and then before that, the space was used. Sorry, after that, this space was used by a company called Airspace Avionics, who basically used to make wiring looms for jets and Formula One cars and things. And the guy that owned it retired, so we had this space available, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I offered it to other people for office space, and it was just sitting there. And Ash Lawrence actually mentioned, said, "Oh, have you heard about hot desking? Why don't you do that? Co-working?" I was like, "I've never heard of it. Literally never heard of it." So probably this time, well, about 3.5 years ago, I'd never heard of co-working. So anyway, I thought, well, this sounds interesting. So I walked away and researched it and thought, well, this is amazing. Why is nobody doing it in Medway? And there had been a few others sort of pop up, but they disappeared pretty quickly. So I looked at what they was doing, and then I went to speak to Paul Andrews down at Fruitworks. He showed me around what he'd done down there, and thought, well, do you know what, this is great. It's not as difficult as I thought it was going to be either. And then I popped up to London. I went around a few WeWorks, Huckle Trees, things like that up in London. Thought, well, this is just a different level up here. Why is it not in Medway? So I came back and literally we started the business in April 2017 and had it all up and running by the second week in July 2017. We had a really tight budget. We literally borrowed and not quite stole, but we found stuff wherever we could. So literally in the co-working space at the moment, we have my dad's sofa with bits of the kitchen is made out of stuff we literally had laying around in the storeroom. Everything else was just sourced via eBay. Furniture, scaffold boards that we literally bought off a scaffolding company, made tables out of railway sleepers and things like that. And it was just, it was great. And my motivation really behind it was actually, do you know what? I'd run quite a few businesses, but I'd never actually built something from the start. And that was my main motivation, to actually build something from the start, but to actually build something that people wanted to be a part of. We hear about all these brands that have massive fans, such as like Apple. I'm trying to think of other ones. Apple's the main sort of one that really springs to my mind at the moment. Probably was Virgin Atlantic up until a few weeks ago. Those sort of brands there that really command a following, which people don't actually care about what the products cost. They just absolutely love their products. And I wanted to build something that actually people really loved, wanted to be a part of, but it'd actually sell the product for me. It'd actually go out and they'd actually be my biggest advocate, my business fan. They could actually be part of this journey as well. So that was my main motivation, and still it is now. If I'm doing anything at Dragon, I always think, are the members going to love this? And if they're not going to love it, I actually have to question that decision and actually work out what I could do to actually make people love that.
So the driver was to build something from scratch and create something that people could really want to sort of be a part of, where you've got your own community champions, if you like, of the space itself, to then generate new members. I absolutely love that, Roland. So In running the space, what do you actually enjoy most about running it? Dragon Co-working. What's the best thing about it?
Helping people. This is what I love, to help people, try and help people, connect to people, help them with their businesses. Just try and be a good human being, really. We're really lucky in Dragon. We have such a great group of people that all just get it and get what it's all about. So yeah, my main motivation is just trying to help people, and just make their business journey easier, give them a great environment to be in. And if I can help any way at all, that's what I want to do. And that's what gets me up every morning.
And what about right now? How have you found running a co-working space during this lockdown period? Obviously, with no actual co-workers about the place, have you been able to do anything differently, or are you doing anything that keeps that community connected and engaged?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, because our whole thing about co-working is actually to get people away from their kitchen tables and sitting at home on their own and isolated, and into a space that's full of other like-minded entrepreneurs, business people, and getting surrounded by positivity. So it's a bit of a challenge. I'm really lucky. My members pretty much all stuck with me. And we've reduced rates just to a bare minimum, just so we can all keep going through this period. Um, but it will end, and at the other end of it, we'll come out stronger. We're already planning now to actually, we're putting screens in, we're doing social distancing marking, um, so we can all go back at some stage. But we've been on our Zoom calls, we've all kept together. I've been messaging people. So the community is still strong. Community is still there. We even made the BBC News with our we did Fancy Dress Friday, and we all dressed up in different things. So yeah, that was quite cool.
I absolutely know that Roland. These Zoom calls, how many Zoom calls do we now do each day? Goodness me. But again, it's great to hear that, the fact that you're continuing to engage with your co-workers, keep that community connected. And again, with that attitude towards the fact that, we are going to get through this lockdown period. And when we do, you're going to be stronger, and all the stronger and better for it. So, brilliant, and good on you again, Roland. Now, what about on a personal level, though? Because up to this point, I've got to be honest with you, I'm feeling like I'm back in pre-season on a countryside run. I'm exhausted listening to the amount of hours you clearly put in and have done over the years to build and run a hotel, and obviously now develop out a fantastic co-working space at Dragon Co-working. But what about you? How do you relax and take time out from this incredible busy sort of work schedule you've got?
Yeah, I mean, I relax at home. I go out for walking. I love walking. I've got my dogs. So yeah, I've got Lily and Monty, the dogs. So yeah, I love going out walking with those guys, spending time with the family. I do love a beer as well. Craft beers. We've got our own brewery in Dragon Co-working, so that's always good fun. Um, but yeah, I've got a camping. Obviously not at the moment, but we've got a camper van. So I love going away and those sort of things as well. But yeah, just I do find it quite hard to relax. I can't just sit still. Um, Even when I'm watching a film, I'm always sneaking over the phone or the iPad to actually look at something for the business or do something like that. So I do find it quite hard to sit and relax, but I'm trying. I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to learn to be a better relaxer.
Dog, family, and beer. I love that. Now you're talking, Roland. So, but we've come to the end. So, finally, to wrap today's Street Soccer United podcast interview, and I will say, Roland, you are just an amazing individual. I know there are so many people around you, many that you know, and maybe even some that you don't know yet. But a lot of people you are impacting in a brilliant way and think the world of you. And I'm absolutely one of those. Your support of the Street Soccer Foundation is just magnificent. And thank you for all of what you do for us. And obviously, through your kind generosity, we are a part of that Dragon community through the foundation. So thank you. But the final question we always ask is, what is the best advice you've ever been given, and by who?
Oh dear, that's yeah. Do you know what? I really want to say something deep and meaningful here, um, but I'll take it back. I mean, this goes back to, I was given this bit of advice by a scout leader, and it happened. It was at scout camp, and I can't remember what happened. But anyway, I was in trouble. I was getting a bit of a telling off from the scout leader. And I remember he said to me, "You should always try to be a good person and put other people before yourself." And even at that time, I probably only was about 13, 14 at the time, maybe even younger than that. And it just sort of really struck a chord with me. And I've always tried to sort of live by that. I've always tried to put other people first and just to be a general good person. I mean, it could be it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or you literally have a penny to your name. We could all try to be good people and actually help other people, put other people first. Um, like some simple things, just holding that door open for people, from offering somebody else that last chocolate biscuit, just little simple things like that, that not only sort of make other people feel better, but they actually make yourself feel better. And it's good for your own mental well-being. There's a good buzz that comes out from helping people. And also, the world needs people that put people before themselves. It's yourself, Keith. You do an amazing job at the Street Soccer Foundation. You've really, really helped a lot of people. And I think if people sort of actually sat down and actually thought about what they do and thought of everything they did, is this something a good person would do? Is this putting other people before myself? I think it would be a better world. I think probably, maybe I'm wrong, but maybe the world, perhaps we are all now getting slightly selfish and slightly self-centered. Perhaps we just need to sort of pull back and actually think about what we do, and if that action is something that a good person or somebody that would put somebody else before themselves would do. Well, thanks so much, Keith. I really appreciate it today, and it's been great to speak to you and the guys at the Street Soccer Foundation. And thank you very much, and continue the amazing work that you're doing. And you'll always have my support in doing that.
Absolutely brilliant. Roland, thank you very much indeed. Putting other people first and just be a good person. I mean, I, for one, certainly don't believe that's going out of fashion. But if it is, it's down to people like you and me, Roland, to show people another way of being, because there's no question that having a kind of how can I help you type attitude really can make the world such a better place. And I thank you sincerely for all of what you do and for your amazing support, as I've said, to and for the Street Soccer Foundation. So although I will say you're pushing it by suggesting to offer that last chocolate biscuit to anyone. I'm only joking. There you go, guys. You've listened here to the magnificent, lovely Roland Stanley, founder and director of Dragon Coworking. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please be sure to tune in again next week for our next podcast interview.